Going on, everybody? It's your boy, Coach Vic, certified land investor. Glad to be here with you. Today, we are going to talk about all the things you need to do if someone does agree to sell you their property. Now, I was just doing a systems check and I'm looking around. I'm not sure if everything is working okay, but if not, I'll put the replay up and then you guys can see it. But if it is, give me a shout out. Say what's up. Ask your questions. Okay, awesome. So this is going to be a fun one today. Why? Because this is something I don't know if a lot of people actually talk about. Now, there's not a lot I can say within the amount of time that I have, but I do think this will be good, especially for those of you who are new to this game and you want to save your time, you want to save some money, and you want to make sure things are done properly. So again, when someone says yes to you, what do? How do you handle that? Because let's be honest, I talk a lot about getting to that yes, right? Building a list, finding an area. Maybe I've given you some negotiation tactics and strategies. And if you do this stuff long enough, somebody's going to say yes at some point. Now, the question is, if they do say yes, is this a property that you should invest in? And even if you did agree upon a price, is it the price that you really should be paying? So that's what we're going to be doing today. All right. So let me tell you a quick story, because the reason why I'm even talking about this today, there's actually two stories. The first one happened yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, where I was alerted by my virtual assistant. They're like, hey, we got another property in the pipeline. I'm so excited. I'm like, great. It's an area we like. We have a buyer lined up. He wants all my properties in this area. It's going to be a slam dunk. And talking to my VA, like, oh yeah, they said they have a will, they inherited the property, everything should be good. I'm like, okay, great. I might need to see this will, but if everything is what you say, then we should be all right. So the property is in person A's name. Okay. Now, what I thought was supposed to happen with the quote unquote will was person A gave it to person B, their son or daughter or whatever, after they passed away. But what had happened was person A passed away without a will. It is still in their name. Somebody along the line, maybe a couple of years later, after the passing of person A, filed an affidavit of heirship, for person A's two sons. All right, so we'll call person A, instead of calling person A, we'll call him Bob. Bob had two sons, Mike and Joe. And okay, great. Mike and Joe, now they own 50% of the property each. It's their property. However, here's the issue. Mike and Joe both passed away. Who my VA was talking to was the widow of Mike. So apparently there's a will, and I couldn't find it. Usually, sometimes wills are public record, they get recorded, especially after someone dies, or if not a will, the probate paperwork that happens after the death, that the will is kind of, I guess, starts that process after they die. Everything gets processed in probate court and everything. And the court uses that will to say, okay, you get this, you get that, for the living heirs. And I haven't seen the probate. I haven't seen the will. So I'm not saying that the person is lying, but I haven't seen it. So I don't know what exactly that person has inherited. But the other issue that widow didn't tell us, which maybe she didn't know, Joe passed away. Joe owned 50% of the property. So if I just went blindly on what that widow said, I would have paid for a property that I wouldn't own. At the very most, I would have half of it. I wouldn't be able to own 100% of it. And at the very least, she could be not necessarily lying, but just mistaken about who owns the property or what her stake is or anything like that. So I want to make sure you guys understand how important it is to know what to do after someone says yes. Now, my first time doing a deal, like I sent out letters, I printed them out myself. I did it by hand, and finally got someone call me back. Wasn't too long later. It was this nice old lady, and she's like, yeah, I'll sell. I didn't realize. I'm like, sell? Okay, all right, what do I do? All right, she said she'll sell. Okay. Who are you? How much? Turns out I offered $104 for the property. She agreed to it. I'm like, oh, okay, this worked. Now, I remember, because this is about 6-7 years ago now, she was a lot more confident on the phone than I was. And I'm supposed to be the one that's, buying the property. Now, it wasn't like she knew what was happening, or excuse me, what she was doing in that area, but she was like, yeah, I'm willing to sell $100. I get it. And the whole time I'm like, wait, seriously? $100? Is this a prank? Is this for real? And, she was serious. Now, I know now why she sold it for $100, because there's a desert square in the middle of nowhere. Again, I sold it later, but I can see why the average person would find no value in that property. Anyways, as I'm trying to figure out what to do, I'm like, all right, let me call you back. And I remember calling her 2 or 3 times, trying to figure out what to say, what to do, what do I need to do next. And eventually she's the one that kind of calmed me down and assured me, hey, it's going to be fine. All right. Why don't you just do this? And then if you pay me this way, I'll send you a deed. I'm like, okay, great. All right, how do I get there to deed, right? So, she kind of walked me through the process, or we kind of figured it out together, ended up working out. But one thing I didn't do, I did not do a title search. So I don't know what the title could have said. It could have been like, she's not even the owner. Granted, it's only $100, but still, right? I didn't actually see if the property was any good. Like, is it sellable? And if it's sellable, how much? Now, for $100, you don't really need to do a lot of work. It's like, you probably spent more money on an expensive dinner, but you get my point. And yeah, at the end of the day, I didn't inspire any confidence in there. Luckily, we got the deal done and it was fine. So I want you guys to avoid all that. So with that said, let's actually jump into some of the things that you need to do if someone does agree to sell you their property. First, I broke this up into 4 major categories, and we'll go through each by each, but let me go over the high overview. First is negotiate down the price, if you haven't done so already. Then you guys figure out how to do the transfer together, and I'll give you some options. After that, start your due diligence. It's probably the most important part. And then finally, facilitate that transfer of property. All right, so again, negotiate down the price, figure out how you're going to do the transfer, start your due diligence, and facilitate the transfer. Simple, okay? 4 steps. Now, first things first. Now, this is kind of a prerequisite. You want to negotiate down the price. So what do I mean by that? Well, you want to make sure you're getting the property as low as possible. So even if you find something crazy in your due diligence, or you just, in your due diligence, you miss something, it doesn't hurt you as much if you paid such a low price. So if you find out that your property is in a flood zone, and because of that, it's hard to sell, well, that's a big deal. If let's say you can sell it for 10,000, and you bought it for 6, it's a big deal. You don't have a lot of wiggle room with the price. However, if you bought that same property that's worth 10,000, you bought it for 2,000, and you find out after you bought it that it's in the flood zone, but it's still sellable, then it's not that big a deal, right? Because all right, damn, that sucks. I can lower the price more to sell it faster, or because it's $2,000, it's not really killing me. So if I hold on to it for a long time, it's okay. So that's the first thing you got to do. You want to make sure you negotiate down the price. Now, I've talked about this in other videos. You can probably check out the other live streams I've done. But in general, you want to somewhat devalue the property in their eyes and remind them you're an investor. You're not here to buy at retail prices. If they can't get down with that, that's okay. Totally understand. You move on. Why? Because it's going to be a billion deals out there. There's so many deals that you can't keep up with them. So don't get fixated on just one deal if someone is being a little too stubborn on the price. Or perhaps you bid off more than you can chew. Maybe the price is still good, but for whatever reason, you can't do it. Either way, you want to negotiate the price as low as possible. Now, with that said, when you're negotiating the price, you talk about the features or lack thereof of the property. You look into other things, maybe their back tax amount or something like that, or if it's in an HOA and what that means. But you want to just get the price as low as possible. So far, so good? Cool. Simple, easy, makes sense. There's a no-brainer there. Now, next, while you're still on that first phone call, and by the way, most times it's going to be one phone call, you're going to figure out how to do the transfer. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, are you going to self-close or use a title company? There's pros and cons to each. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you would know that at one point I was very much against most title companies because I just they cost too much. They don't really add a lot of value to some of these properties. I can do the work myself. Even when they make mistakes, they have verbiage in their contracts that let them off the hook, all these other things. And all those things are still true. However, there are times when they do make things easier for you. Like if you're only doing one deal a month, yeah, do the due diligence yourself, do a self-close, especially if it's like cheaper property. You're paying less than like $4,000-5,000 just self-close it, right? You'll be paying more, or almost in many cases more on the closing fees than you would on the actual purchase of the property. And it's unnecessary for a lot of those cheaper lots. But when you're paying for something more expensive, or you're getting a big lump, like I bought 27 lots a couple of months ago in one big bundle, right? I don't want to have to check those out one by one. Let the title company do that, right? I want to make sure everything is good. And since it's 27 lots, it's a lot. If I sell them all at once, I want to be able to sell that with peace of mind, knowing that they all got title insurance, things like that. If it's just one little lot, that's a small little infill lot, you bought it for $700, title insurance not that big a deal. The person who's going to buy that property, they don't care about title insurance. Why? Because they're not going to get a loan to build on it. They're just going to put their RV or their trailer on it, junk it up, and wash, rinse, repeat. When you have something nicer, title company makes sense. Now, if you are using a title company, you want to communicate that properly with the seller. Be like, hey, I'm going to use a title company. Here's a title company. This is the information I'm going to need. And you're going to need something very important. It's called the purchase agreement. Now, how does the purchase agreement look? It doesn't matter. It just says in writing that the seller is going to sell you the property for this price. And then you could put any contingencies and things like that, like, okay, we got to close within a certain amount, and I'm buying it as is, and I'll pay taxes, or whatever you want to say in there. But the title company will take that purchase agreement and then start their work. And they're just going to make sure the title is marketable and sellable. And then they'll, charge you for that. They'll ask you for the money, not just for the money for the property, but any back taxes that may be owed, unless you said the seller's going to pay those back taxes, but usually you take those on to kind of help them, grease the wheel so they actually sell to you. Now, with that said, after that, that's easy, right? Let them do their work. You pay when you pay. They'll record the deed. They'll do everything for you, right? So boom, done. How much can you expect to pay? Depending on how hairy the title is and everything else like that, $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. It depends. It's usually between $1,000 and $2,000, right? Again, if you're paying for something $500, $600, $700, don't do that. What you should do instead is a self-close. Now, to do a self-close, you're basically doing the work of what a title company would do, except because it's just you and it's just one property, or small amount of properties, you can probably get the same work that takes them 2 weeks, take you an hour. Why did it take them so long? Well, they hire everything out to abstractors and everything else. And, it's not like you're the only game in town. They got other people that they have to tend to. So they came first. They get their stuff first. By the time they get to you, it's been a week, 2 weeks out. Then they can finally go through the title chain and make sure everything's good. And then if they do find something, they got to facilitate with the seller and all that. So what you're going to be doing when you're doing a self-closing, you got to find out what supporting documents do you need. Can you just record a new deed because the person who bought it, the person who's selling to you, they're not married and anything like that? Great. But what if they were married and they got divorced? What if the person who owns it inherited it, but there's no will? What if there was a will? What if, that's usually the three most common scenarios. So you got to figure out what supporting paperwork you need. Depending on the situation would dictate what you need. If it's a straightforward transfer, then all you need is a deed, and you get that done. Great. Once that happens, once you figure out the supporting paperwork, you got to figure out how do you get the paperwork to the prospect. Now, do you mail them the paperwork? If they're elderly, you probably will. If they're younger or they're more tech savvy, you can probably just email the documents so they can print them out and then actually go and get them notarized or whatever that needs to be done. Depending on what you are doing, it will dictate if you're going to pay up front or do some kind of escrow service. And there's two ways you can do escrow. And escrow is just basically a middle person who holds the money and everything and doesn't distribute funds until the deed is properly signed and given. So it's like a third party just to make sure everybody stays honest or whatever. But what I often do is just pay the person directly and expect honesty. And if they don't, I will call the police. So far, it hasn't had to happen. I've been doing it for 6 years, but it's good. Now, if you're going to do it that way, you're going to need to send, what I recommend is sending them the money and the actual deed that they can fill out you already filled it out, but they just got to notarize, make it simple, and a return envelope. If you're not going to do that, I recommend a mobile notary. So instead of sending the person the money and the deed, you send that to a mobile notary who you will have to find, who is local to the seller, not to where the property is, but to the seller. Then the mobile notary would arrange a time with that seller to be like, hey, I'm gonna come to your house or your place of business. I'm going to have the documents. You're going to notarize it. I'll do it right here. And then once you notarize, I will hand you the check. And then once that happens, you're going to instruct the mobile notary, okay, there's a return envelope. Just put the notarized documents in a return envelope. I will take care of the rest. Either way, whether you're paying directly to the owner or you're using a mobile notary, eventually they're going to get the things notarized. They're going to have all the documents you needed because you gave it to them back in your hands. Now what's next? Well, you got to make sure it is time to actually record the deed. Now, I gave you a quick overview, but let's back up a little bit before you actually send the deed and the money out, right? Because I wanted to give you the big picture before I give you some details. So after you figure out what type of paperwork and everything is needed, you're going to have to go back and be like, okay, I understand this is a straightforward thing or whatever it is. You say, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, I need to do a little due diligence just to make sure we can do a legal transfer. If everything is good, then I'm going to send the mobile notary or I'm going to send you the money directly, whatever you decide. But if not, I'll call back and we can figure it out. And they're like, okay, great. So what are you looking for during that time? Well, here's a couple of things. You're going to check the title chain, making sure that the person who you're communicating with, or at least on their behalf, actually own the property and they have the right to sell it to you. And then make sure that they acquired the property legally, and properly, because you want to make sure that if it wasn't done properly and then they quote unquote sign it over to you, well, you don't really own it, because as soon as you try to submit it to the county assessor is going to be like, nope, this wasn't done properly. This person doesn't even own the property. I can't accept this transfer. Boom. And now you're like, what the hell, man? So you're wasting your time and potentially your money if you're not careful. So you want to check the title chain, make sure everything was done properly. What else should you be checking? Well, you want to make sure that if the property was deeded to a husband and wife, that both the husband and wife will sign the deed that you create for them. Don't worry so much about the address on the deed, as in, hey, John and Jane Doe live here and they own this property. That's not as important as John and Jane Doe. Make sure you also have the proper names, right? You can't be like John C. Doe, but John D. Joe is signing, his son or something like that. It's got to be the right person. This is why you check the title chain to make sure you're dealing with the right people. What else are you checking? Check how much they owe in back taxes. Just because they say, oh, I don't think I owe anything or I should be all paid up, doesn't mean it's true. Not that they're trying to lie. It's just things slip their mind. Maybe they didn't pay the right amount. Who knows, right? Always check the back tax amount. If it turns out that they owe something significant, and significant means something different to me and you, then maybe you go back like, hey, I just found out that you owe, $6,000 on taxes. Either kill the deal or like, I can't pay you what I promised I'd pay you, but I will take care of the taxes. So maybe you deduct that $6,000 from the offer price that you offered them. Just depends on the property. What else should you be checking? See if the property's in HOA. How do you know? Just ask, like, hey, is your property HOA? If they don't know, then you can look it up by the subdivision. If there is an HOA, find out if there's any HOA dues. Find out if they're late on their HOA dues. And usually if they're late on taxes, they're probably late on HOA. So it's very rare when somebody pays one and not the other. So they're late on one, assume they're late on both. So you have to call the HOA or somehow get a hold of somebody part of the HOA to find out what they owe. If there is an HOA, check if there's a transfer fee. Meaning like every time a sale happens, the HOA needs to get paid from it. I think it's stupid, but it is what it is, right? If you're going to play business or play ball in this business, in that HOA, then you got to play by the rules. If you don't want to play by the rules, then there's a billion other subdivisions. Go deal with them. Next, see how you can get power, water, sewer, all that stuff to the lot if that's necessary. Now, I'm not saying if you can't get those things to the lot, you can't sell the property, but it does make it more difficult. Having something that's easier to use for building, even if the person would never plan to build, but knowing in the back of the mind, well, I can build on it, even if they're not going to do that, that makes them feel better. So understanding what has to be done to get power, water, and septic and all that, it's going to be a game changer. Now, you don't got to do all the work. All you got to do is just see, okay, if I want to get power, this is the number I call. So you can just pass it on. If I need to get septic, well, as long as the property is of a certain size, then I can do that. Or if there's, sewer or whatever it is, right? Find out what those things are. So you may need a minimum size to build on. You may need to figure out, hey, to get power is going to cost this much money. You may need to find out, all I could do a septic tank, and the only type I could do a special septic tank because the lot's so small. Whatever it is, find that out. You don't have to do the work, just find it out. What else should you be doing your due diligence? Yeah, after that, calculate all the expenses. So taxes, transfer fee, postage to get the documents to and from the thing, the mobile notary. You might need an estate lawyer if the property is good enough and the title chain is hairy. They may be able to clean it up. That might cost. Recording fees, depending on the county, would dictate how much it costs to record per page. And then see how much time it's going to take you to get this done. Now you add all that up, taxes, transfer fee, postage, mobile notary, maybe the estate lawyer, recording fees, and your time. And then you see, okay, if I have this in expenses, I plan to sell for this amount, does it make sense? If you're only making $2,000 or $3,000, to you, it may not make sense. Like, that's too much work for the amount of money I'm going to get out of this. And it's not going to come until much later. If it's like, oh, this is a no-brainer, I'm going to be making a ton of money. This is a simple transfer. I don't got to do anything. I barely got to pay for it. Right. So you got to see how much you're going to be looking to get. Right. And always be conservative on your amount so you're not disappointed. And yeah, so that's the due diligence part. Now, finally, wait, let me make sure y'all still with me. I said a lot of stuff all at once. I just want to make sure y'all still with me. I think we're good. Finally, facilitate the transfer. So whatever you guys decided, do it. If it's a title company, make that happen. If it's a self-closing thing, make it happen. If you're finding a mobile notary, do it. Whatever it is. And do it ASAP. You don't want a nosy relative of the seller saying, oh, you're selling your property for that price? I would have bought it if I knew you would sell it for that. And now it starts slowing things down. As this happened to me before, and it'll happen to me again, right? The quicker you move, the quicker you can get them paid, and the quicker you get the property. You take your time, you're asking for trouble. You're asking to delay your payday. You're asking just for a headache. So move as fast as you can without, skipping on the details, right? Understand, since you are the land investor, you're the expert, you're going to do most of the work. And if you're doing most of the work, that's good. You want to make this process easy for them so they don't actually have any resistance to continue with the sale. You don't want no last minute resistance like, oh, well, damn, that is a cheap price and I can't believe I'm selling for that. Am I doing the right thing? Well, I don't know. You don't want that. You don't want that confusion for them. If they have that confusion, then they're not going to actually do anything. They're just going to sit there, not accept your payment, not accept your money, not do what they need to do and keep the property, and conversely keep their problem. You don't want that. All right. Now, if you are doing whether you're self-closing or using a title company, follow up as often as you need to, once a week or whatever. If it's like, hey, still going through the process, expect this, or I found that, or whatever it is. So they're not in the dark. Again, if you leave them in the dark, it makes it a lot more often for that nosy relative to come and, gum up the works, or for them to get in their own way. So check in often, just, make sure they're still good, give them updates if necessary. But if you do it ASAP, you won't have to do that, because it's like, okay, great, we're going to do this deal. Perfect. All right, expect the deed and the check in the mail in like 3 days. Done. They get it. Hey, did you get the check? Did you get the deed? Great. When do you think you'll get that returned to me? Tomorrow? Fantastic. Hey, I checked the tracking number. I don't see anything. What's going on? You gonna get to it today? Great. See the tracking number? Great. All right, I see that you sent it, right? That's what you want to do. You want to keep checking in, making sure it happened. If it's a mobile notary, just say, hey, the mobile notary is going to call you. Make sure you guys pick out a good time. When you expect to be free. So I can tell the mobile notary to call you around a certain time, right? You're going to do all the work. You're facilitating everything. You're making it happen. Now, the examples I gave are a little bit more, they're not as common to go that much detail, but you might have to do one of those things here and there. And finally, once you get everything back, go ahead and record it ASAP, whether you're going to record it by sending it into the mail or use an online recording service like Simplifile. Do not wait. Get it recorded, because if there's any issues recording, you want to have that communication still hot with that prospect. So if there's a mistake, they're still going to be willing to work with you. If it's been like a year or something and they find a mistake later, then they're going to be like, wait, I sold you a property? Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. It's been so long, right? But if you got the property recently or whatever, and you're like, hey, there's a mistake, we got to redo something, or, I need this other supporting paperwork, they're going to be a lot more willing to help because everything is still fresh in their mind. Okay. With that said, any questions? I think we're good. Now, when you're going through this process, I went through a lot. I tried to cram in a lot of information in a small amount of time because I don't have a lot of time. So what I want to let you guys know is that it is very easy to forget a step or two, and sometimes it won't kill you, but you do not want to make a habit out of that, because that one thing that you don't know can come back and bite you in the ass when you least expect it. This is why I have a checklist that I like to give out to all my coaching students to make sure that they go through everything and they don't miss any details. If you want that checklist, hit me up. Or if you want to be one of my students so you can do this with my help, hit me up. I would love to talk to you, help you out in your merry way. But in the meantime, that's it. This is what you should do when you are get your offer accepted. Next time, when you have this quote unquote issue, or I won't call it an issue, when you're just in this situation, now you know what to do if you didn't know already. Did I miss any steps? Is there something that you like to do that I didn't mention, for lack of brevity? Say so in the comments below. Anything that you found particularly helpful, say so in the comments below. Also, if you want my help in coaching and land investing, say so in the comments below or hit me up in the DMs. I'll be glad to help. Other than that, it's Coach Vic. Glad to have helped. Hopefully you found this useful. I will talk to you guys later, my friends. Peace